I'd love to hear more about what Sisense is doing for, Sisense, the application is doing, for your finance.
Yeah, so some of the things, I would say the main thing we've built out in the Sisense.
Welcome to the Financial Innovations Podcast, helping CFOs save money and time with cutting-edge technology. My name's Daniel Villani. I'm here with Alyssa Shadinger. Alyssa, it's nice to have you on.
Hi, Daniel. It's great to be on. Thank you so much for having me.
We have a lot of exciting topics to cover here, one of which being AI in finance. Is this something that we need to be afraid of? We need to embrace? Proceed with caution. We'll get to that in a second. But Alyssa, I don't know if you want to just take a minute to introduce yourself and tell our audience about your background.
Yeah, absolutely. As Daniel mentioned, my name's Alyssa Shadinger. I'm the VP and Head of Finance at Sisense, which is an embedded analytics platform. I've been with Sisense for a little over a year, running all of their accounting and finance operations. Prior to Sisense, I've been in the startup world for about 5 years now. I previously ran finance and accounting for Linode, which was an infrastructure as a service provider. They were acquired by Akamai Technologies in March of 2022. And prior to that, I spent about a decade in consulting. So excited to chat with you more today about both the consulting side and working in industry.
Yeah, no, those are definitely great points. I think anytime we have someone who starts out in consulting and, goes into industry, it's a little bit of a transition, but, I think you bring a great, process behind you, from doing it, over and over again at different companies. But, I'm definitely interested in, you've worked in the startup world, you've worked, in various other industries of different sizes. Tell me, I guess, a little bit about what technologies have you seen in the finance function that, have really just added a tremendous amount of value or, are worth looking into for companies that, that may not have them?
Certainly. I would say your biggest investment and probably what will save you the most time and energy is your ERP. So I've worked with both QuickBooks and NetSuite in startups. At Linode, when I joined, we were trying to manage, I think, 5 legal entities on QuickBooks. I think that's a huge indicator for when it's time to move over to something like NetSuite or Workday, is when you're managing multiple entities, because QuickBooks just can't manage that. You have to then download all of your financials into Excel and do a consolidation. Maybe there's technology out there that helps with that, but at least 4 or 5 years ago, that's how we were doing it. So pretty quickly at Linode, we transitioned over to NetSuite, and it made a world of difference just being able to manage all of our books in one central location. And NetSuite allows you to automate a lot of your back-end processes. So bank reconciliations, prepaids, some of your accruals, fixed assets, rev rec. I would say that really just makes a world of difference, but it is a big investment. So I feel like you probably have to be above 10 million ARR. Maybe when I was at Linode, we were closer to like 50 to 75 by the time we implemented NetSuite. I think it'll be a little different for every company depending on the use case, but it is a pretty significant investment.
Sure. I guess, did you guys spend any time after the fact just kind of quantifying, any man hours saved or anything by jumping to a new ERP, or you're just happy that it enhanced your day-to-day operations?
Yeah, that is something we considered, the cost differential between QuickBooks and NetSuite. But when we were on QuickBooks, we had a very lean team. We only had 3 accountants for the entire company. So it was taking the team 15 to 20 business days to close the books. By the time we were done, we were rolling right into the next month. We were mostly a B2C platform, so we were managing over 100,000 monthly customers. So just the sheer amount of manual reconciliation that went into that, um, really, it started to become untenable. So once we switched over to NetSuite, we were able to get our close down to 5 business days eventually. And we never had to make the team any bigger. So we were able to scale the company from about 70 million to almost double that, about 130 million. And we never added any additional headcount to the accounting team. So I think just in terms of if we were still trying to do all of that work manually and get acquired by a public company and have a reasonable close timeline, we would have had to significantly invest in headcount instead of technology.
Sure. You guys still haven't taken the record. The record I've heard so far is 19 days to close the month. So you're a little bit ahead of that, but it's great to see that you were able to significantly cut down the close. Anytime you go from one ERP to another, I know that you were in a little bit of a unique situation where you were physically at the limits of what one technology might have. But I guess, what advice do you have for a company that says, well, my ERP might be doing what I need it to do now. I don't know if I necessarily need to upgrade it. Like, when is the right time to really just start looking to see, will I get the added benefit out of upgrading at this point versus, waiting a year or two?
I would say the right time to start exploring a more sophisticated ERP is when you notice either the volume of transactions or just that close timeline really starting to creep up. And if you're considering adding a full-time headcount to your organization, I think that's when it's time to like look for an ERP system and figure out, well, if I took that same investment and invested it on the technology side, could I achieve the same thing or maybe even more efficiency than bringing another person on board? Because as companies grow, you'll have to make both types of investments, both technology and headcount. But I think where if you leverage technology early on, you can really continue to operate pretty lean for a substantial amount of time.
Sure. And I guess, how did you find out about the different ERPs? Like, was there independent research you were doing? Were you, is there something like groups or articles people should be subscribing to or looking at, just to really know what's out there in the market and what they should be considering?
Yeah, I've leveraged quite a few different information sources. I would say if you are at a startup company or a consulting firm, honestly, you'll probably have a wealth of information at your fingertips. I know when I worked at Deloitte, there were always tons of publications coming out through Deloitte or affiliated vendors. In the startup world, I like to subscribe to all of our investors' newsletters. They typically have community forums for finance professionals and other, honestly, they typically have community for each type of function within an organization. But I found a lot of value in like Bessemer Venture Partners and Insight Partners. They have pretty good communities for finance folks. If you don't have access to one of those communities, I found the Off the Ledger, which is Airbase's Slack community. I found that to be really helpful. That's a very active community. I feel like if you post questions or even try to set up one-on-one conversations with people, that community is very willing to help. And then I've definitely signed up for things like I think the Morning Brew has like CFO Dive. Think I know there's another one I subscribe to, but I'm drawing a blank on the name. If I
Okay.
remember later, I'll come back to that.
Yeah, no, that's fine. So, in terms of ERPs, I know we talked about getting some additional efficiency there. Um, have you worked or implemented, reporting? I know at Sisense, you guys have. I'm sure they have you use your own technology over there for a lot of the analytics and AI, and we'll talk about some of that in a little bit here. But have you used other tools? On the reporting side? Because One thing that I always run into when I talk to customers, especially NetSuite ones, is everyone loves NetSuite. When it comes to the reporting out of NetSuite, everybody's always looking for a better option of how do I do better reporting and analytics off my NetSuite data. I know they have some modules in house that that they try to upsell you on to do it, but when it came to consuming the data, what types of tools do you like to use for just general reporting and analytics?
Yeah, general reporting and analytics at Linode, we did use Tableau, and we were lucky to have a finance analyst who was SQL and Tableau wizard. So we had some pretty robust reporting coming out of Tableau at Linode. At Sisense, we do try to drink our own champagne, as we say, and we do use Sisense for a lot of our KPI reporting. However, because the Sisense platform is so customizable and it's more of a data and analytics platform, it requires a lot of work to build like a specific financial report. So we have been utilizing Planful for about a year and a half at Sisense. That's actually something we're looking into. I think there's been a lot of innovation recently on the reporting side. So we're looking into a few other tools. Cube is one of them. I recently heard of a company, Equals, that also has some AI capabilities that, at least from their website, looks really sharp. So that is one area we're continuing to explore.
Yeah, no, that's great. I've worked with several companies that have migrated off of Planful to other vendors, like Oracle EPM and so forth. Definitely after the show, if you have any questions on any of that, that's kind of my big area of expertise is EPM and BI technology over there. I'd be happy to help you out. In terms, so it with Sisense, you're doing a lot of your dashboarding, reporting out of there. It sounds like from a planning perspective, doing your budgets and forecasts. That's today it's Planful, tomorrow might be something else over there. In terms of like what I'd love to hear more about what Sisense is doing for Sisense, the application is doing for your finance group and some of the benefits that it has there as well.
Yeah, so some of the thing I would say the main thing we've built out in the Sisense platform is all of our management reporting and KPI dashboards. So it's Sisense is great because we have a direct integration with all of our Salesforce data. Um, Obviously, companies like it, in addition to NetSuite, most of our valuable data is sitting within Salesforce, within all of our customer accounts and contracts. So it makes it really easy to build out some of that management reporting where it's not necessarily GAAP standard. So we can look at things like ARR, all of our churn metrics, some of our sales efficiency metrics like LTV to CAC. We do also pull in financial data from NetSuite for some of those metrics, but anything where we're looking at our sales data from Salesforce, we've built that out in Sisense.
No, that's great. I won't ask you about pain points with the tool just in case any of your colleagues are going to watch this, but um, I know, just want to shift gears a little bit here. I know, one of the topics that, I was excited to talk to you today is about AI in finance. And I know that there's a lot of controversy. Chat GPT started it all with, can an AI replace a human being over here? And, there's a lot of debate as to, whether AI will be a, job creator, job killer. How have you used AI in the finance function? And I guess, what do you think about just in terms of where it's going?
Absolutely. We've started to use AI in our finance function mostly via Chat GPT, OpenAI's product. So far, and my GC would advise me to say this, like, don't put any of your company's proprietary or confidential data in there. Don't put customer data in there. Um, So while we're like, I'm cautiously optimistic, I think AI will be amazing. We haven't exactly, I think a lot of legal teams haven't really figured out some of like the privacy and security concerns yet. But I have used it personally to help draft, announcements for like spiff plans for our sales team. We used it to help draft a series of dunning letters, just kind of put what we had in there today and ask Chat GPT to, maybe jazz it up a little bit or bump it up against best practices. So I think it can save you a lot of time, and even like just clerical things like that you might not think about. We recently just downloaded we're testing out Google Duet, which is Google's version of AI. So I've used that a little bit, and you can kind of do the same thing in Google Docs. Just give it a prompt and ask it to help you draft a message. In Gmail, in Google Sheets, it can help you draft might have to redo that. In Google Sheets, it can help you draft a project plan, put in certain milestones just by you feeding it a little bit of information about your project. So I'm very hopeful. I've also seen a lot of the tools we work with, like Planful, like Equals that we're evaluating for reporting. I feel like a lot of companies are trying to come to market really quick with AI features within their tools. Personally, I haven't really reaped the benefits from those yet, but I am really hopeful. I feel like in the next 6 to 12 months, it'll be a different story.
Yeah, no, it's very interesting to see where it's going, because I think the people are in a couple different buckets. They either love it, they're scared of it, they don't know how to use it, and maybe they don't have the greatest feedback of it because it's not being used to its capacity. Right now it's something where you have to know how to use it in order for it to be used properly. I recently just had it write a macro for me, and it worked on the first shot. It took 5 minutes to do because I knew what to tell it, right? Versus if I didn't know what to tell it, it would, give me results that, are going against sheets that I'm not using, and, all kinds of errors over there. So, it's interesting to see. I really like how you called out about the privacy piece of it, because a lot of people don't know that, if you use the free version or even the plus version of Chat GPT, they're using that to constantly improve the product. So they're taking, the inputs and the feedback from the sessions to feed back into the model. So you definitely don't want to put usernames and passwords and, URLs and all that kind of stuff into the product. At this point, there is an enterprise version that doesn't use the inputs for training. So, it's just important that a lot of people are posting stuff on LinkedIn and all that. Here's how you could use Chat GPT to comment on your financials, and they're not necessarily putting that disclaimer that you don't want to copy and paste your unpublished financials into the product.
Yeah, I will say, speaking of LinkedIn, a couple weeks ago, I went to go repost a role that our controller was hiring for. And I noticed even LinkedIn now, it said, "Do you want AI to help you write this post?" So I said, "Sure," and typed in a sentence. I actually wrote a pretty good post for me that I had to edit a little bit, but it's funny how you're just seeing it pop up everywhere now.
Have you run into an issue, or not, I shouldn't say issue, but an instances where maybe people are applying for a job at the company and they're using AI to write their cover letters and resumes and all that kind of stuff, or not quite yet?
Not quite yet. We did I just personally hired for two roles, and if they did it really well, and I didn't even notice. But nothing glaring yet.
Right, because one thing I think is going to be interesting, and I see this, sometimes as I'm posting jobs for some software developers for my software business, and you get a lot of responses that sound very similar, and that these are people that use Chat GPT because it's the exact same answer, just slightly different, or cover letter, just with slight tweaks here and there for it. So I guess one of the or downfalls, if you will, is as the hiring manager looking for positions, being able to distinguish, is this person, are these person's credentials just the result of chat GPT saying this is what you should say to get this job, or are these person's credentials actually in some way um, reflective of the work that they've done.
Yeah, I could see that being an issue, especially if they're just dropping in your job description. So it sounds very tailored, but GPT is giving everyone pretty much the same response.
Yeah, definitely. So the next thing I wanted to talk a little bit about is, one thing that, as we were talking about, what to go through in terms of discussion points for today was, streamlining processes, technology. We're currently in an environment where a lot of companies are going best of breed for different cloud products. You don't have to set up specialized servers, so just buy, my best CRM and my best ERP. And I know you mentioned Salesforce and NetSuite and Workday and other Planful, other systems as well. Um, I guess when it comes to integrating, getting all of them to speak to each other and give you the insights that you want out of the systems, do you find it challenging to just get all your data to the place that you need to report on it?
Yes, I think that's a pretty common issue, and I feel like there's a lot of vendors out there trying to solve. Like I know Airbase, Ramp, Divi just merged with Bill.com. I feel like they're all using that narrative of get all of your expenses in one place, one dashboard. And they've been really successful because I think that is an issue for a lot of people, myself included, at certain times during the trajectory of both Linode and Sisense. You just feel like your information is in all of these disparate systems. And while NetSuite is, if set up properly, should really be your source of truth for a lot of things, it's hard when you have like an expense reimbursement policy. It's hard to get everything coded over from your expense platform 100% accurately with like every vendor name tagged properly. Um, that's actually one we currently use Coupa at Sisense. At Linode, we use Divi. I really liked the Divi platform personally. I think it gave us really good visibility into all of our vendor spend, and especially once they merge with Bill.com, I feel like it is kind of a one-stop shop platform now. We use Coupa and Expensify at Sisense, so I do find it's disjointed and quite frankly more expensive. I think there's now, because these platforms have all of the services in one platform, they're just more cost effective as well. So that's one thing we're looking at. That'll be like a project that's already on our roadmap for Q1 of 24 is getting a new vendor platform implemented and sunsetting Coupa and Expensify. In terms of reporting, I think too, even like for the FP&A team, historically, our FP&A team at Sisense did a lot of reporting, not just in Planful, but honestly also in Google Sheets and Excel, which I think a lot of companies pitfall to as well. So we're currently doing our budgeting process in Google Sheets so that we can give all of the stakeholders the access to the data that they need, and then we'll aggregate into Planful. But again, that's why we're looking at other options besides Planful, because it would be great to have like a more user friendly platform where we could do everything on that platform and not have to like switch between Google Sheets, having like just random data points over in Google Sheets and not having any way to really report on them on other than like manually massaging and uploading to Planful.
Yeah, that's always the challenge of a lot of these platforms are, they charge you per user. It's a high cost, and then a company invests in it, and then they say, hey, what alternate ways can we do to not have to allow 1,000 users in the system? Let's do some of it here and some of it there, and you end up having the same problem that you bought the platform to try to solve, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think too, thinking about the close process with reconciliations, that's another area where you typically have information that lives in spreadsheets. We use Flowcast at Linode. We also use it at Sisense. Have also had some conversations with Numeric, which is, from what I understand, pretty similar to Flowcast, maybe with a few additional features. And I think for the relatively low price point, I feel like those systems really do give you a good bang for your buck, where it's these closed management platforms, they basically sit between your ERP and all of your reconciliations in Excel, bring them into one dashboard. So from a reviewer and auditor standpoint, it makes things really efficient. You kind of have everything you need right in the web page. You can click into links and see your reconciliation. You see the balance, which is being pulled directly from your ERP. And then you can also do all of your flux analysis within those platforms. So I I would definitely recommend, once you're getting to like a more like Series C, Series D startup, or if you're in an enterprise company and not already using one of those systems, I would definitely recommend looking into that.
Yeah, no, that's great. So I guess just seeing the landscape that that you have now, how you have a bunch of different products over there. If you had, I guess, free reign to, money was no object, you could go implement and do whatever you want. Would you keep the approach of having the best of breed type of technology on different platforms? Would you um, look to say, hey, maybe we need to compromise a little bit and have a more centralized kind of function with maybe fewer products, but more integrated with each other?
Yeah, I mean, I wish I could say budget was no consideration to budget. I think what most startups have learned in the last 18 months is it's no longer growth at all costs. It's definitely profitable growth is now in vogue and required from a lot of investors. But if there was like a carte blanche approach, I would say, and I think we are taking this like approach already at Sisense, is streamlining the tech stack as much as possible. And maybe because I haven't been in a large enterprise where we could have like an internal NetSuite developer that could automate everything within NetSuite for us. Um, I think that would be great if you could do it. I just think there even are some limitations to NetSuite, where are you really ever going to get to where you're like only using one platform? Maybe, and maybe I just haven't seen that, but I guess, just my experience, I would think that would be really difficult. But I do think you know, I'm trying to streamline the tools at Sisense. Like, let's take Coupa and Expensify. Let's take those two platforms and get it down to one as much as possible, because I think, you need your ERP. I think having the closed management software is really valuable. Something for accounts payable and all of your T&E and vendor spend. Um, and depending on your AR operations, like we don't really use an AR platform because we're all B2B. We've automated most of our billing and collections within Suite Billing within NetSuite. We do use Stripe, of course, for credit card payments. I think you actually can kind of bring that into NetSuite with a connection to Stripe. We also use Avalara for sales tax collection. And I would say really those things, like that's kind of our core tech stack. And I really don't see us needing anything else other than maybe an outside FP&A tool. We're lucky because we have Sisense, and maybe eventually we can just use Sisense, but probably some type of FP&A tool. But I would say if you have those things, that's probably enough. I feel like there's just a million platforms out there now. Like, I wish I could get to inbox zero every day, but I feel like I get like 30 cold sales emails a day, and it blows my mind. I'm like, how are there this many platforms? Like, you could get something for procurement, commissions. Like, there's just so many things out there that if you're a big enough company, I think it makes sense. But I think when you're just scaling and starting out, it's like start with the ERP and then branch out as you need to, as things as like your manual processes start to break, or there's something you can't easily automate without like an internal developer.
Sure. Yeah. No. And it sounds like, um, you know, it would be beneficial for a company that maybe you only need one particular function, but you look forward a little bit out into the future and say, hey, does it make sense? Eventually, will we use this other type of tool? And if so, maybe we should look now to see, is there one tool that does both of them? And maybe it's just a matter of paying for the one feature and adding on later on, rather than what's the best tool we can get for this now. It doesn't do the other piece, and we're going to have to buy something else later, and then figure out how to consolidate all of that.
Yeah, I think that's like a really smart piece of advice, because we're actually Sisense is working on a new product launch for 2024, and there's which it will be more of a self-service product. So there's additional back-end infrastructure we need to get in place to be able to like administer that self-service sales motion. And that's one thing I've been going back and forth with the product management team on, is like there's some really cool like Series A, Series B companies out there that have certain functionality, but I'm taking the perspective of, well, but let's think about this. Do we want to have 5 back end tools that all have to talk to each other and have different connections? Or do we want to, maybe it might not seem as cutting edge, but the incumbent who's, does all 5 of these things, maybe it makes more sense to go with that option.
Yeah, one thing that I just kind of thought of as we were talking here is having different systems. Also, one thing that's often overlooked by a lot of companies is total cost of ownership of the product. Right? There's here's what my subscription cost is going to be, but then there's not a lot of thought put into, well, who's going to manage and maintain this. And you go with one vendor for your CRM, and one vendor for your dashboarding, another vendor for this, and then you look and you say, oh, wait, now I need to hire 5 different administrators because I can't find one person with the skill set of all the different products that I implemented over here. Have you run into like those kind of issues, like in your experience? It could be current position, past position as well, just in terms of, hey, we bought all this stuff, now how do we maintain all this?
Not yet. I will say for NetSuite, I think there's a lot, luckily, there's a lot of outsourcing options out there. So at Linode, we used a third party, I think it was RSM. So we used RSM. They had a third party service. I think they charged us a flat fee every month, which if I think about what that came out to annually, it was probably like a third to a fourth of a full time employee. So it was much more cost efficient to manage it that way. We do the same thing at Sisense, but we actually use ACS directly from Oracle. So it's just Oracle's consulting arm, and it's similar pricing. But again, I mean, we're a startup, so we're only getting like 10, 15 hours a month from these services, and we don't really need much more than that. We usually only have 1 or 2 projects going on at a time. This year, we really focused on getting that whole billing and collection process automated within Suite Billing. So that was kind of what that team spent their time working on for us for probably 6 to 8 months. At a bigger company, I could definitely see that start to become an issue. Luckily, also with like Coupa, Expensify, Divi, Stripe, like most of those platforms are user friendly enough. Flowcast, where you don't really need an administrator, as long as you have someone on the accounting team that can be the internal owner of that tool and keep things up to date as employees offboard and onboard into the company.
Yeah, no, that's great. So it sounds like so there are always different options that you always have to for maintenance. You could hire an administrator, you can do a managed service type offering, which it sounds like you that's kind of the path you're going with, having a third party manage and maintain it. You could also go that power user route of just take the most technical person in your group for that particular technology, and they become the guy or girl that goes and maintains it. So definitely a great way to minimize the cost that it's going to take to manage and maintain your systems.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think you make a really good point that whatever route you go, you definitely do have to take into consideration that total cost of ownership. Luckily, I think in startups, you still have to consider it, but hopefully, I would think if you're doing things right, you shouldn't be hiring an additional person for each additional system. But it's definitely something you should keep an eye out for.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So any other, I guess, words of wisdom or lessons learned along the way that you think it might be good for the audience to just kind of keep in mind and consider as they look, at the different systems they have and what they want to implement in the future?
Yeah, I would say try to take every company is going to be different. So try to take a step back, maybe speak with your leadership about what the priorities are for the next 24 to 36 months. Try to take that more long term point of view, because when you're implementing a new technology stack, it's definitely not going to happen overnight. You're probably going to do 1 to 2 months of evaluation and then 1 to 2, maybe even 3 months of implementation, depending on the complexity of the system. So you really want to make sure what you're implementing is going to set you up for success over like the next 3 to 5 years, not just the next 12 months. And then look at your budget, like what can you feasibly afford to spend given your size and scale? And then start looking at what's out there in the market. And I would take it kind of one step at a time. I think with maybe some exceptions, I think if you try to do too much at once, it usually doesn't work out well. Like even just implementing NetSuite, if you're changing ERPs, like that's a huge undertaking, and you want to make sure your team is fully focused on like getting your chart of accounts like set up correctly from day one, making sure you do all of your user acceptance testing. I think that's where I've like anecdotally heard people run into issues where it's like if you don't really take the time to get your team to test out the system and get trained on it before you go live, you're just, you're setting yourself up for like a couple months of pain down the road. And yeah, so I would probably say like those are the biggest things. Just make sure you are solving for the long term of the company, at least like the next 3 to 5 years, and where your leadership wants to go. That you're not trying to do too much at once. Make sure you're implementing properly, take it slow, test everything. And also just consider like the tech stack ecosystem, like making sure every tool that you're looking at will eventually be able to integrate with each other. Because I think teams run into issues there too, like where if you pick something that's a little less developed, a little less known in the market, it may not integrate with all of your other tools. Like maybe it will down the road, but that might not be available today.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely the part you said about user acceptance testing and training. That's companies of all sizes often overlook that and try to skimp cut corners in those areas. Just because you got the team that they're doing their day jobs, then they don't have time to test another system. Say, I'm sure it's fine, and then it ends up not being fine, and they learn about that later on down the road. So definitely great advice that you have there. Well, that's all the time that we have for this show. Alyssa, if people want to get in touch with you and maybe ask any follow-up questions or just connect, what's the best way to reach out to you?
You can find me on LinkedIn at Alyssa Shadinger. You can reach me at alyssashadinger.com and on Twitter at Alyssa Shady.
Well, That's all the time that we have today, everyone. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel so we can get more great guests like Alyssa on our show. Alyssa, thanks again for being on. It was great having you on, and you shared a lot of great insights with our audience.
Thank you. I really appreciated being on the show. It was great speaking with you, and hope to chat more in the future.
Yes.